One day, Ryan stopped replying for a whole week. Emily grew restless and finally took the first flight back to Boston. When she reached Ryan's apartment, the door was slightly open. She walked in, calling his name. The place was empty except for a note left on the table. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. "Emily, I had to go back to Chicago. The firm reopened the case to clear my name officially, and I might have to testify. Don't worry, I'll be back soon. Please don't stop living your dream for me. Love, Ryan." Emily sat down, holding the note close to her heart. She whispered, "I'll wait." 3 months later, she received a call from Ryan. His voice was filled with relief. "It's over. They cleared everything. I'm coming home." When they finally met again at the Boston airport, Emily ran into his arms, crying with joy. "You came back," she whispered. Ryan smiled. "I told you, fate always finds a way." Years later, as they walked hand in hand along the same river where their story began, Emily looked up at him and said, "That night when you were a stranger, I never thought you'd become my forever." Ryan kissed her forehead gently. Sometimes, the unknown turns out to be the best part of life. Months passed peacefully after Ryan returned from Chicago. Emily and Ryan's bond grew even stronger, rooted in trust and deep affection. They decided to move into a small house near the seaside in Cape Cod, a quiet place where the sound of waves replaced the city noise that once surrounded them. Emily opened her own design studio, while Ryan started consulting for a new firm. Life was simple, calm, and full of small, beautiful moments. Every morning, they would have breakfast together on the porch, watching the sunrise paint the ocean in shades of gold. One rainy evening, just like the night they first met, Ryan surprised Emily with candles, flowers, and dinner by the window. "Do you remember this rain?" he asked, smiling softly. Emily laughed. "How could I forget? That's when you showed up with an umbrella and changed my life." Ryan took her hands in his. "You once told me you didn't believe in second chances. I did everything to prove you wrong." Emily's eyes glistened. "And you did." He knelt down and took out a small box. "Emily Carter, you walked into my life by accident but stayed by choice. Will you marry me?" Tears rolled down her cheeks as she whispered, "Yes, 1,000 times yes." The sound of rain outside grew stronger as if nature itself was celebrating their moment. Months later, they were married in a small beach ceremony attended by Sophie and close friends. As Emily walked down the aisle in her simple white dress, she thought about how far they had come, from strangers to lovers, from doubt to destiny. After the ceremony, Sophie hugged Emily and said, "I told you one day you'd thank the rain." Emily laughed through tears. "You were right." As the sun set, Ryan and Emily stood hand in hand, watching the horizon. "Do you ever think about that first night?" Emily asked. "Every single day," Ryan said softly. "If that night hadn't happened, I would never have met you." She leaned on his shoulder. "It's funny, isn't it? The night that broke me also brought me the person who made me whole." Ryan smiled, tightening his arm around her. "That's what fate does. It breaks us only to rebuild us stronger." Years later, as they watched their little daughter run along the same beach, Emily felt her heart swell with gratitude. She whispered to herself, "He was once an unknown person, but now, he's my whole story." And as the waves crashed against the shore, she realized that love doesn't always arrive with grand gestures. Sometimes, it simply walks in on a rainy night, holding an umbrella. Emily and Ryan's relationship began to bloom, life seemed peaceful again. Emily felt joy returning to her days, and Ryan became her constant support. They often took evening walks along the Charles River, talking about their dreams and fears. But one quiet night, everything changed. Emily was organizing her work files when she came across a document with Ryan's name. It was an old company project file from a year ago, one that mentioned a scandal involving an employee named Ryan Mitchell from Chicago, accused of mishandling funds and vanishing before the audit. Her heart skipped. Could it be the same Ryan? She tried to calm herself, telling her mind it might just be a coincidence. Still, the thought refused to leave her. The next day at work, she asked Sophie about it casually. Sophie frowned. That's strange. I thought our Ryan came from Chicago, too. Maybe you should ask him directly. Emily hesitated, but the seed of doubt had already been planted. That night, Ryan came over for dinner as usual. Emily smiled, hiding her worry. You never told me much about your life in Chicago, she said, trying to sound casual. Ryan's expression changed slightly, but he answered calmly, there's not much to tell. I worked at a firm, then moved here for a fresh start. Was it because of work problems? She asked gently. Ryan looked up, his eyes meeting hers. Who told you that? No one, Emily said quickly. I just found an old file with your name in it. Ryan sighed and leaned back. Emily, I knew this would come up someday. Yes, that file was about me. But the truth is, I was framed by my senior manager. I found out about their internal fraud, and before I could report it, they turned the blame on me. It ruined my career, so I left to start over here. Emily stared at him, her heart torn between belief and fear. Why didn't you tell me before? She whispered. Because I didn't want my past to define me in your eyes, he said softly. You looked at me with kindness, not judgment. I didn't want to lose that. There was silence. Emily could see the pain in his eyes, and deep down, she knew he was telling the truth. Still, doubt haunted her. That night, after Ryan left, Emily couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about everything he said. The next morning, she decided to dig a little deeper. She contacted a journalist friend in Chicago who owed her a favor and asked about the case. Later that evening, she received an email. It confirmed Ryan's story. The real culprit had confessed 6 months ago, clearing Ryan's name. Emily felt relief wash over her. Tears filled her eyes as she realized she had doubted the man who had done nothing but protect and care for her. The next day, she went to Ryan's office. Without saying a word, she hugged him tightly. I'm so sorry I doubted you, she whispered. Ryan smiled gently. You had every right to ask. I'm just glad you know the truth. Life slowly returned to normal, but fate had another test waiting. A month later, Emily received an offer to design an interior project in New York City, a dream opportunity. It meant moving away for at least a year. She told Ryan about it one evening as they sat near the river. His face turned serious. That's amazing, Emily. You deserve it. But it means leaving Boston, leaving you, she said softly. Ryan smiled faintly. I don't want to be the reason you hold yourself back. Go chase your dream. If what we have is real, distance won't destroy it. Tears welled in her eyes. She wanted to stay but also knew he was right. A week later, she packed her bags. The night before leaving, Ryan surprised her with a small gift, a silver bracelet engraved with the words, "Fate finds a way." So you don't forget me, he said, smiling sadly. Emily hugged him, whispering, never. In New York, work consumed her. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. They talked daily through calls and messages, but Emily could feel the distance growing, not just in miles but in emotions. Months had passed since the night Noah apologized in the rain, and although things were slowly mending between them, Emma still felt the weight of what had happened. Trust was not something that could be rebuilt overnight. Yet every morning when she saw Noah waiting outside her apartment with her favorite decaf coffee and a gentle smile, she felt hope return piece by piece. Seattle's winter had turned to spring, and with it came new beginnings. Emma's pregnancy was now showing, and Noah had moved in to support her. He took care of her diet, attended prenatal yoga classes with her, and even painted the nursery in soft yellow tones. One evening, as Emma sat in the rocking chair, watching him carefully assemble the crib, she couldn't help but smile. You're really doing all this yourself? She asked playfully. He laughed softly. I want to make sure everything's perfect for our little one. No shortcuts this time. His words carried meaning deeper than furniture. He wasn't just building a crib, he was rebuilding trust. Despite the progress, there were still moments when Emma's heart stung with memories of his doubt. She remembered how alone she felt the day he questioned her loyalty, and that pain lingered like a shadow. One afternoon, while she was at the doctor's appointment, she saw a familiar face in the waiting area. It was Tyler, the same friend Noah had used for the fake test. Emma froze for a second, unsure whether to approach him. Tyler noticed her and smiled nervously. "Hey, Emma, how are you?" "I'm okay," she replied politely. "You must know what you did really hurt me, right?" Tyler sighed and looked down. "I do. I told Noah from the start that his idea was stupid, but he was so scared of losing you. He thought if you passed his test, he'd finally feel secure. But when I saw how much it broke you, I realized it wasn't a test of you, it was a test of him." Emma nodded silently. His words struck deep. She realized Noah hadn't acted out of malice, but out of fear of repeating his parents' mistakes, fear of being betrayed, fear of not being enough. That night, when Noah came home from work, Emma decided it was time for an honest talk. "Noah," she began softly, "I saw Tyler today." He looked startled. "You did? What did he say?" "He told me why you did what you did. I understand it now, but I want to make something clear. Love can't survive constant testing. You can't measure someone's heart like an experiment." Noah listened quietly, his expression filled with remorse. "You're right," he said. "I was so afraid that history would repeat itself. My dad always thought my mom would leave, and that fear made him push her away until she actually did. I guess I became just like him." Emma reached for his hand. "You're not your dad. You're better than that. You just have to believe it." He squeezed her hand gently. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'll keep earning it every day." Over time, their relationship grew stronger than before. They attended couples counseling, learned how to communicate better, and slowly, the walls between them disappeared. Noah began writing her little notes every morning, words of appreciation and love that reminded Emma of the man she first fell for. "Can't wait to meet our baby," one note read. "And thank you for not giving up on me." The months flew by quickly. Emma's belly grew, and so did their excitement. Noah was more attentive than ever, reading parenting books, cooking her meals, and talking to the baby every night. On one peaceful night in late June, Emma felt a sudden sharp pain in her stomach. She gasped and clutched the couch arm. Noah rushed to her side, panic flashing across his face. "Is it time?" She nodded, breathing heavily. "I think so." They hurried to the hospital, their hands clasped tightly together. Hours later, the cries of a newborn filled the room. Noah's eyes glistened with tears as he looked at their baby girl. "She's perfect," he whispered, kissing Emma's forehead. And Emily and Ryan's friendship grew. They met often, sometimes at lunch, sometimes after work. Sophie noticed the change in Emily's mood. "You're smiling again," she teased. Emily laughed. "Ryan's just nice. That's all." But deep down, she knew it was more. She was slowly falling for him. One evening, Ryan called. His voice sounded off. "Can you come to the park near your place? I need to tell you something." Emily rushed over, concerned. When she arrived, he looked pale. "Emily," he began, "I didn't want to tell you this, but I think you should know. The night I drove you home, something happened. You fainted in the elevator. I called for help, and the security guard helped me carry you to your apartment. You were fine after a few minutes, but you don't remember because you were half conscious. I stayed until you fell asleep to make sure you were okay." Emily was speechless. "Why didn't you tell me earlier? I didn't want to make you uncomfortable. I didn't do anything wrong. I promise." She could see the honesty in his eyes. She nodded slowly. "I believe you, Ryan. Thank you for staying." That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She felt a strange mix of emotions, gratefulness, confusion, and something deeper. The idea that she was cared for, even by someone she barely knew, touched her heart. A few days later, she invited Ryan to her apartment for dinner. They cooked together, laughed, and shared stories. As the evening went on, Emily realized she no longer felt broken about her past. Ryan had unknowingly healed a part of her heart. Months passed, and their friendship blossomed into a quiet love. It wasn't rushed, it grew through understanding, kindness, and shared moments. Ryan confessed one evening, "You were a stranger that night, but now, you're the person I can't imagine my days without." Emily smiled softly. Maybe sometimes, meeting an unknown person is what saves us. Years later, as they stood together at the same balcony where they first met, Emily thought about that night, the rain, the loneliness, the chance encounter. What began as an accident turned into the most beautiful chapter of her life. And every time she looked at Ryan, she remembered that sometimes fate doesn't knock, it gently enters through the rain, carrying an umbrella and a kind smile. It was a cold night in Boston, and the city lights shimmered like tiny stars scattered across the ground. Emily Carter, a 26-year-old interior designer, sat quietly by her apartment window, watching the rain fall. Her heart was heavy, her thoughts tangled. She had recently broken up with her longtime boyfriend, Liam Parker, after 5 years together. The reason wasn't betrayal or anger, it was distance and silence. Somewhere between career goals and late-night arguments, they lost the connection that once held them so close. Her best friend, Sophie, had been trying to cheer her up all week. "Emily, you can't just sit at home forever. Come with us to the company party tomorrow night," Sophie said over the phone, her voice full of excitement. "It's at the Grand Boston Hotel, everyone will be there. You need this." Emily hesitated but finally agreed. Maybe it was time to get out of her shell and breathe again. The next evening, Emily dressed in a simple blue dress, her hair tied in a low bun. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, she just wanted a break from her thoughts. The party was lively, the music soft, the laughter loud. Sophie introduced her to colleagues, and for a moment, Emily felt like she belonged again. She grabbed a glass of juice and walked to the balcony to get some air. While she stood there, she noticed a man sitting alone on a bench near the hotel garden. He looked lost, quietly staring at the city lights. Something about his stillness caught her attention. A few minutes later, the same man entered the hall. Their eyes met briefly, and Emily quickly looked away. Sophie, noticing her distraction, smiled. "That's Ryan Mitchell, the new project manager. Just moved here from Chicago." Emily didn't think much of it, but later that night, fate had other plans. When the party ended, heavy rain started pouring outside. Taxis were hard to find. Emily stood under the hotel canopy, shivering slightly. Ryan came over, holding an umbrella. "You look like you could use a ride. My car's parked nearby. I can drop you home if you're okay with that." Emily hesitated, then nodded politely. "Thank you. That's really kind." The ride was quiet, with only the sound of rain tapping against the car. Ryan spoke first. "Rough week?" he asked. Emily smiled faintly. "Something like that. Just trying to move on from a few things." They reached her apartment, and as she was about to step out, Ryan said softly, "I know this sounds strange, but you seem sad. Sometimes talking helps." Emily gave a small laugh. "And sometimes silence helps more." They both smiled. It was a small, warm moment. The next morning, Emily woke up with a pounding headache. Her phone buzzed. It was Sophie calling. "Where were you last night? I tried to call after you left the hotel." Emily frowned. "I came home and went straight to bed." Sophie paused. "No, you didn't. Ryan said you dropped your purse in his car. He came back to return it but couldn't reach you." Emily froze. She looked around and noticed her purse wasn't in her apartment. Confused, She checked her messages. There were none. She quickly called Ryan back. Hey, sorry about last night, she began. It's fine, he said. You were half asleep when I brought you to your door. You asked me to wait to make sure you got inside safely. Then you said something about forgetting your keys, so I helped you open the door. Don't worry, you fell asleep right on the couch. I left right after. Emily's cheeks burned with embarrassment. Oh no, I don't even remember that. Thank you, that's very kind of you. It's okay, Ryan replied gently. We all have bad days. Still feeling awkward, Emily decided to meet him for coffee that afternoon to thank him properly. When she met Ryan at a cafe downtown, she realized he wasn't like most people she knew. He was calm, thoughtful, and didn't rush to fill the silence. They talked about work, music, and life. She felt a comfort